Alright, so hey everyone, today I want to talk about Shadow Warrior 2's controller issues and give some requests for improvements for Shadow Warrior 3. As far as the aiming, I think the aiming is pretty good in Shadow Warrior 2, it's just missing a lot of options. One of the improvements I want to that Shadow Warrior 2 made over the first game was the first game had slower diagonal sensitivity, but here that's been corrected. But jumping into 2's issues, 2 uses a 25% circular dead zone. And unfortunately there aren't options for that. 25% is a pretty common dead zone, but it is large, and there isn't any way to adjust that. So in Shadow Warrior 3, it'd be nice to see a dead zone slider. Smaller dead zones would allow us to make precise adjustments more easily, and being able to increase the dead zone would be useful for players whose sticks lean and they get some unwanted drift. Another option I'd like to request is an option for the acceleration curve. I like this Shadow Warrior 2's curve, but some players might not, and some players might want a more linear curve, or a curve that starts slower than it currently does, and having that option would allow them to do that. Some of the weird things about, you can see here that my vertical sensitivity is double the horizontal, and that's because the ratio you see here applies to the aiming down sights. When you hip fire, the vertical sensitivity is halved, so right now I have this set up so that the ratio is even in hip fire. So let me just do too much of the screen. So this is the horizontal sensitivity, and this is the vertical sensitivity. You can tell that they're about the same. When aiming down sights, this is the vertical sensitivity, and this is the horizontal. So the horizontal is obviously slower in this example. So that can feel pretty awkward when jumping between hip firing and aiming down sights. You don't need to really aim down sights at all in this game, really, but when you want to, it is obnoxious. But another problem for this is this changes your diagonal movement. So like if I take, say, move at a 45-degree angle and hip fire, you can see that I move about to the base of this tree. I'll do that again just for consistency's sake. Okay, a little lower, but about the same. But when I do this when ADSing, you can see that it's much more vertically biased. I'll do it again. And that's because of how much more sensitive the vertical axis is when aiming down sights. So your angles actually change when moving in and out of ADS and hip fire. So you can actually see that happen right now, even though I'm pointing the stick in the same direction. So the fix for that is to make these options the same, whether you're in hip fire or ADS or not. So if you set 3:3, you should get, you know, 1-to-1 ratio in hip fire and in ADS. And if they want to have slower sensitivity in ADS, that's fine, but scale both these options evenly. The next issue is aim assist. You can see that's disabled right now, but it actually doesn't disable it fully. You can see when I pass over an enemy, it slows down. You won't see it too dramatic because of how far away the enemy is, but if they were closer, that window would be quite a bit larger. When you disable aim assist, it disables the tracking, but it leaves the slowdown. And ideally, this option should, when you disable it, disable all aim assist. And hopefully that works that way in Shadow Warrior 3. That, or you can have 2 separate aim assist options, one for slowdown, one for tracking, and let players control it individually like that. Because it is kind of obnoxious when you're playing and there's multiple enemies around, and there could be an enemy here and it slows down, and once you get off target it goes back to normal, and then re-slows down when you hover over another enemy. It feels very inconsistent for those that don't enjoy playing with aim assist. The next improvement would be full button customization. There's a few layouts offered, but they don't change anything too substantially. So if you want to jump on a bumper or trigger, you can't do that with this, but if we were given full button customization, we would be allowed to do that. Now lastly, and probably the biggest issue this game has, is the weapon wheel is pretty terrible. It's a huge step back from the first game. One thing that does make it better than the first game is it registers in real time. The first game would pause the game whenever the wheel appeared. It's really bad here because of how unresponsive it is. It follows, a big part is because it follows the a lot of other games where tapping the input gives you one action and holding it brings out the wheel. And what this does is create a hard cap on how fast you can switch weapons. If you try switching too fast, you'll end up with the first input, or your input will drop. And like what you can see here is I'm putting perfectly right, but when I bring out the wheel, you'll notice that it's pointing left, where the previous weapon was. It doesn't like acknowledge that I'm pointing right until I remember it, or like reinstate that input. So if you try switching too fast, you'll either get the previous input, or it'll just drop the input entirely. And sometimes even when you wait until the wheel appears, it drops it. So I registered that there. It might have been a little over there, but I'm pointing straight down, but it's not highlighting that. I have to remind it. Okay, register that, register that, register that. But it didn't register that. I'm aiming at the melee weapon, but I have to remind it there. So you can get a ton of dropped inputs because of this. And it's absolutely frustrating, especially when there's like a lag spike and the wheel decides not to appear at all or appear longer than it normally does. It feels really, really uncomfortable. Excuse me. And I understand the reasoning for this. Like they think it's convenient to have previous ranged weapon and a previous melee weapon, but for those that just use the wheel, like if I wanted my previous melee weapon, I'll just point in that direction. You can see it's dropping all those inputs. I would do that. And the improvement is that the weapon wheel should appear immediately. Like if I held the button, I should get that weapon. I should be able to switch as fast as I am able. And what they could do is like they did in the first game, where the central position of the wheel is whatever previous weapon it's bound to or whatever, so that when you just tap the input and don't put any stick input, it'll use the central position of the wheel. If you push in a direction, it'll prioritize that weapon and you'll switch to that. That way you can get the wheel registering immediately and have a previous weapon accessible. Because right now this is pretty awful, and it's probably the most uncomfortable thing is when you're just trying to play and switch weapons based on enemies' elemental affinity and that kind of stuff, and you just have to try 3 or 4 times to get that weapon out because you were too fast, it just didn't want to register it or whatever. Like, I mean, I'm pointing up right now, but it's not registering. But yeah, that about covers the issues. To quickly sum up, we have like to request dead zone and acceleration curve sliders, making these sensitivities even regardless of whether you're in hip fire or function the same regardless of whether you're hip fire or ADS. Make it so that aim assist completely disables it. Give us full button customization. And make the weapon wheel register immediately. And doing that would make Shadow Warrior 3 play vastly better than Shadow Warrior 2 currently does. Yeah, so, Flying Wild Hog, if you see this, hopefully you'll make those improvements. But everyone, have a good rest of your day.